the governor had a proclamation, and you played a little role in that. Thank you and congratulations.
Well, thank you, Ted. Yes, I did play a little bit of a role. This is the 42nd year that Rotary International has been involved with polio and the polio eradication campaign. And every year we have the World Polio Day. And people just recognize that all over the world because it's so important. We have eradicated polio with all of our partners, with Rotary taking a big lead. We've eradicated polio almost all over the world, 99.9% gone. And that's very exciting. But at the same time, I thought, well, now this is an important thing, and this is an important year for polio, and the fact that Rotary is working to help with COVID using our polio network. So I drafted a polio proclamation and sent it to the governor's office, thinking, well, wouldn't it be wonderful if Virginia declared and recognized October the 24th as World Polio Day in the Commonwealth? And I got that in, and I waited, and I called their office, and they said, oh, yes, we have it. And I didn't hear any more. And so I got a little anxious, and so I called our delegate, Joshua Cole, and said, I wonder if you could help with this little issue. And Joshua got right on it, and the next thing I know, the governor is signing our proclamation for the first time in the history of the Commonwealth, recognizing October the 24th as World Polio Day in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
That is a great story, and the fact that Stafford Rotary played a part in it that even adds to it.
Yes. Well, Stafford Rotary is, we have been chartered for 20-some years. I'm terrible, I can't remember. But for 20-some years, and we have been very involved in our community, helping feed the hungry and provide clothes and food and backpacks for kids and all of that. And we've been deeply involved in the polio campaign as well. And so this is something that's dear to my heart. So a few years ago, I asked Stafford County Board of Supervisors if they would recognize World Polio Day. And Stafford County Board has been recognizing World Polio Day in Stafford County for 5 years.
Whereas World Polio Day is held throughout the world on October 24th in celebration of the birth of Jonas Salk, the American researcher who developed the first polio vaccine in 1955. And whereas Rotary International and its global partners launched the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, GPEI, more than 3 decades ago when polio paralyzed 1,000 children every day. And whereas, since the launch of GPEI in 1988, more than 17.4 million people, mainly in the developing world, who otherwise may have been paralyzed, are walking because they have been immunized against polio. And whereas more than 200,000 paralytic cases of polio are now prevented every year through this initiative, which today includes Rotary International Foundation, the World Health Organization, U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, UNICEF, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, to immunize the children of the world against polio. And whereas polio cases have dropped by 99.9% since 1988, and the world stands on the threshold of eradicating the disease with only 2 countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan, each having had only 1 polio case so far in 2021. And whereas to date, Rotary has contributed more than $2.2 billion and countless volunteer hours to protecting nearly 3 billion children in over 122 countries. And whereas, in addition, Rotary has played a major role in decisions by donor governments to contribute more than $10 billion to this effort. And whereas there are over 1.2 million Rotary members in 36,000 clubs throughout the world that sponsor service projects to address such critical issues as poverty, disease, hunger, illiteracy, and the environment in their local communities and abroad. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Stafford County Board of Supervisors on the 19th day of October 2021, that it be and hereby does proclaim October 24th, 2021 as World Polio Day in Stafford County. Thank you
So
very
they
much.
led the way, and now some of the other counties in Virginia. And there are really very few, Ted, there are very few states in the United States that actually recognize World Polio Day. But with the Commonwealth leading the way this year, we even had some additional states finding out what our Commonwealth was doing. And now they've also declared October the 24th as World Polio Day in their states.
For people that don't remember, I remember as a child getting a polio shot at school. And I know my grandparents talked about how the polio vaccine was such a game changer. If you don't remember those kind of things, polio was, I mean, we all know the stories about President Roosevelt, and it was a terrible, terrible disease.
It was a terrible disease, and many, many children. This is an interesting fact. When we began to work on this eradication effort, there were 350,000 children every year that would get polio. And that's a terrible, terrible disease. And they were in iron lungs. So many of the people nowadays have never seen or heard of an iron lung. And people lived, those children, even adults lived in, and there are people even today who are still crippled from polio. So polio is only a plane ride away, and there is still a few cases, well actually only two cases reported in the world. One case reported in Afghanistan, one case in Pakistan. The governments are involved. There are a number of organizations that are involved. I would like to mention those organizations. Of course, we have the CDC, and Congress donates every year to the CDC for polio eradication. We also have the UNICEF, and of course the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and these core partners are so very, very important. Last year in August, the continent of Africa was declared polio-free for the first time. So it's really a devastating disease. There are still millions of people every year, and that's millions, not thousands, millions of volunteers who must continue to vaccinate people all over the world against polio because one case can spread.
Wow. So it's still something you don't want to take your eye off of, because we don't want to have to deal with that again. Because I remember as a child being told stories, and you feared. I just remember myself just as a kid fearing I don't want to have to have an iron lung.
Yeah. Well, and you couldn't go swimming, you couldn't do anything because of polio, and it's just such a devastating disease. The children now are still required to have a polio vaccine before they can go to school. So we know here in the United States, just like others throughout the world know, that our children must be vaccinated by the time they're 5 years old against polio, or polio's only a plane ride away.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the emphasis that you have put on this, and just it's one of those diseases that now we don't hear much about, but 40, 50, 60 years ago and more, this was on a lot of people's minds.
It was top on their minds, and Salk and his vaccine, that was the first, and people would stand in line to get their vaccinations. Be sure the children did, but even adults back then had to have it too.
So Stafford Rotary, if someone wants to find out more information about Stafford Rotary, how do they do that?
Well, they can go online, of course, to www.staffordrotary.org, and we have a whole bunch of information there. Our address is on there, and we do meet at Riverside Theater every Wednesday at noon. We welcome guests. Come in, learn more about us. Consider becoming a member, because we're a good, strong community organization that works to help people here at home, but also around the world.
And you do a lot of good, and I think just the education on this. It's a good reminder to focus a little bit of time on a disease like polio.
Yes, well, and it's very serious, and it's still serious, and we do need to keep reminding ourselves, and that's why throughout the world on October the 24th, we're reminded of the importance of this disease. And every child that gets vaccinated throughout the world, not sure about here in the United States anymore, but around the world, they get what we call a purple pinky finger. And there's a purple ink put on their finger that does not come off for several days. This aids the volunteers to know which children have been vaccinated.
Sandra, thank you for this information.
It's been my pleasure. I've enjoyed being with you. Thank you, Ted.